I see people losing 30, 40, 50 pounds, being in the best shape of their lives, feeling great, feeling alive again. That fire that they once lost, they have all that back. And then what happens? They forget to remember how things were, how painful it was, how frustrating, how embarrassed they were, how shameful they felt. Welcome to another episode of Mindset Mastery. I'm your host, Araujo. Go ahead and check in if you're on here with me. Thank you for joining me for this early morning Mindset Mastery, and I was excited just to get on the mic and go ahead and express my gratitude and express the thoughts and feelings that I've been feeling here over the last 2-3 days. Today marks the 18th wedding anniversary for Carla and I, 18 years of marriage. I met her when I was 20 years old. And we got married a few years later. She was 19. And today marks the 18th anniversary. And it just gets me thinking about how things could have completely been a different story, right? It could have completely gone a different route. We would have never realized what we have today building this together, and really forcing our marriage to change, really fighting for our marriage, fighting for ourselves more than anything. That really transpired a big change in our outlook, the expectations, our standards, and realizing that the way we were going was caused by a lot of mediocrity. It was caused by complacency. It was caused by just the many things that I think that go unnoticed for years in marriages, right? Because if you think about where marriages go, and the vast majority ending up in divorce. And also when we start looking at the overall health of society, of how health and fitness has become has been put on the back burner. Our medical system is stretched to its core because of just being complacent, being in this place where convenience and just forgetting that everything that is great requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of work. And today's subject is along the lines of that, is don't forget to remember. Don't forget to remember. And, I remember when we hit the hardship on a relationship, I say it was around the 10-year mark. Carla says it's around the 6 and 7 year mark. We were just not on the same page. I think the reason I say right around the 10-year mark was because that's when I felt the burden of the pain, right? And Carla was feeling it for many years. She was suppressing her true nature, her true feelings. She was suppressing what she wanted to create in this world. And I was the suppressor, right? And unknowingly, I was the one that kind of spearheaded that whole process. And, it just wasn't working. It wasn't working. There was just a lot of frustration. And I think a lot of the frustration for me came from not being able to build what I wanted. Like, I had all these great ambitions for business, but I didn't realize how I was sabotaging a lot of that, right? Because, just the way I was treating myself, right? The over drinking, the overeating, the staying up late, the staying away from the house for hours upon out, for all day long, for the sake of growing a business. I didn't realize that all those things were stressing my marriage, were stressing me out, were stressing the quality of life that I can create for myself. And I've told the story many times about how stressed I was. It was visible on my face. I mean, I would have like these black eyes, visible black eyes, due to all the stress that I was carrying. And it bled into other aspects of my life, including my marriage. And we were this close of calling it quits. And as a matter of fact, we did, but we fought, not necessarily for the marriage, but we fought for ourselves, of what it means to live a life on fire. What it means to take self-responsibility, because a lot of the frustrations that Carla and I were going through was pent up on how I was feeling about myself, and vice versa. I was feeling, just really frustrated with my own actions. I was reeling from just wanting to quit on myself, but I also bled it into my marriage, wanting to quit on my marriage. And these are the things that I learned to take personal responsibility for. And we always say this thing like, we didn't necessarily fight for our marriage. We fought for ourselves as individuals, right? Because it was real easy to blame the other person. That happened often. And as a matter of fact, as time went on, our disagreements grew uglier, right? They grew more disrespectful. They grew where we would, after a fight or a disagreement, we would go weeks without talking to each other, like these roommates, these upset roommates, right, in a home, which created a lot of awkwardness, a lot of resentment. And, and those are the same things that I never forget at this point, because it was all caused by me not paying attention. It was caused by my own frustration, my own resentment, and the disrespect we brought to each other and ourselves, more importantly, because you don't bring goodness to other people if you can't bring that goodness to yourself, that quality of love for yourself and appreciation for yourself. So when we're both feeling that way, it just creates this unreasonable dynamic between myself and Carla, and our marriage suffered for that, and our business suffered for that, and the way I treated my body suffered because of that. And one of the things that we realize is that when you learn to appreciate yourself, when you're able to love, respect, and appreciate yourself, you can love, respect, and appreciate the other person. And the same concept can also be transferred over to business, right? When you work on your marketing, sales, and systems, there's no question that you're going to continue to grow. But when you start missing those elements of your business, when you forget to remember, that's when things start going down the wrong path. And one of the things that I've realized is I remember the way we used to feel. I remember the feelings. I remember the emotions. I remember the pains of us not being on the same page, the frustrations, the resentment, right? Feeling entitled that I should be treated a certain way when I couldn't treat her that same way. I don't forget to remember. And I think that's what's allowed us to grow in a way where we didn't think we could be disconnected ever. Right? We didn't think we could have this much love for each other, this much respect. We didn't realize we can build something great together. And it was all on the basis and the foundation of not forgetting to remember. And I think that's one of the things that we have to bring to the forefront on a consistent basis. All those lessons, all those feelings, all those emotions, we need to bring it to the forefront so we don't go back to that place. And just like in relationships, many business owners do the same thing. They forget to remember how it felt not to have any money. They forget to remember how overwhelmed they were when they couldn't meet the bills, right? Couldn't meet ends meet. They forget to remember how tough it was, how emotionally taxing it was, because they had a few good months. So they go back to the patterns that will be in alignment of feeling that same exact way, feeling overwhelmed, feeling like the business is never going to grow. And I think that's an injustice that we all, put ourselves in, forgetting to remember the pains and the emotions of a bad relationship just because you have a few good months, forgetting the pains and overwhelming of not having enough money, of being broke just because you had a few good months. And this happens with people that are not used to continuing to level up their quality of life. Because real players, people that are in a position where their marriage is on fire, they constantly remember. They don't allow themselves to just sit back and be complacent on how things were. I get up at 4:30 in the morning because I remember what it was like when I couldn't even use my arms because of the surgeries that I had, laying in bed. I get up at 4:30 in the morning because I remember how it was getting home at 2 o'clock in the morning, drunk, and then hungover the next day, and having my own family leave me in my house alone because they had things to do and they were tired of my patterns. I remember those emotions, the feeling of anger and resentment, being all alone in my home because I was too hungover to do anything with my own family. I remember those things. But I don't want my kids to remember that. I don't want my wife to remember that. I remember it because I want them to only remember how I'm showing up today, strong and powerful. I remember the times where I had to make big purchases on our anniversary date, where we had to go on these extravagant vacations because I'm trying to make up for all the times that I was coming up short. I remember those times. Trying to make up 365 days on one day. How about I show up every day? How about you show up every day? So you don't have to feel those pains of your business, of your relationships, of an unhealthy lifestyle. We have to remember, and we cannot forget to remember, because all these lessons, all this anguish that we may be feeling right now, that you may be feeling right now, you felt it before, but you forgot to remember. And those that seem to continuously grow and prosper and continue to live these extravagant lives is because they never forget. They always put themselves in that situation. They never think that they're above being there again. And it happens. It happens in our industry. It happens with businesses all the time. They have a few good months and all of a sudden they forget what it felt like not to have any money. To be overwhelmed and almost paralyzed by thinking if it was ever going to happen for them. And at the moment it does, they spend like it's like there's like it's always going to be this way. They make decisions like things are always going to be like this way. Like once you pass this standard, it's always going to be that way. When in fact it's not. Because they forget to remember. And if I forgot to remember, I don't think we'd be in this place. Carla and I would be in this place where we're beating the odds each and every day. Not only in marriage, right? Not only having kids, but like magnifying that with running multiple businesses together. You know how stressful that is? Most won't be able to make that. And if you're in that same situation, understand that most won't be able to do what you're doing, but you cannot forget to remember. There's a reason divorce rates are high. There's a reason why business failures are high. Because those individuals forget to remember just because there was a few good months. They don't learn from their mistakes. They don't learn from the lessons that are being taught to us each and every day. I refuse to forget. That's why I get up early. I refuse to forget. Because I remember how my body felt, the way my face looked, stressed out of my mind through the worry, through the abuse. And some of us are doing that every day, and I see this all the time. I see people losing 30, 40, 50 pounds, being in the best shape of their lives, feeling great, feeling alive again. That fire that they once lost, they have all that back. And then what happens? They forget to remember how things were, how painful it was, how frustrating, how embarrassed they were, how shameful they felt. And slowly but surely, they go back to their old patterns. Why? Because they forget to remember. And they go back to the same cycles, feeling that emotion again, feeling frustrated, forgetting that they overcame that to begin with. And we cannot go another day forgetting to remember. If you want to take a lax today, I invite you to remember how things used to be. If you haven't told your wife or your kids that you love them, you appreciate them, and hug them, I want you to remember how things used to be. I remember feeling the guilt of not having a good relationship with my eldest. That was taxing. That was heavy on me. It was heavy on my soul. But if I just sat there, nothing would have ever improved. We got to understand that expansion is always. It's not just one way. Expansion means always. So if you start showing up powerful today, you will color the shortcomings of yesteryear, right? Of yesterday, of many years in history. A lot of people think that expansion is just one way. You got to go this way. You got to go up. Expansion is always. You can make up for history. You can make up for your mistakes, for your shortcomings. You can make up for all those things for yourself, for your business, for your relationships. If you just start showing up powerfully today. We got to understand that. I no longer feel the guilt of many years behind. Is it going in and out? I couldn't afford to live in that shame. So I had to do something about it now. And guess what? My daughter doesn't remember how short I was showing up many years before. Right? She doesn't remember that. Carla doesn't remember, and if she does, it's often, um, she often thinks about how things are today. Of course, we have to remember, but we don't have to dwell on it. I'm not asking you to dwell on your past. I'm not asking you to be scared. I'm asking you to be proactive and just realize that if you do nothing about it, you will get nothing. But if you're constantly working towards something, you will win. Life will be very rewarding for you. Many of you have demonstrated it. I've demonstrated it. I hope you've seen that. But now it's up to you to remember the defeats, to remember the despair and the feelings that came with that and the suffering that comes with that, the worry and the frustrations. We have to remember it. I'm not saying dwell on it. I'm not saying become so worried about it you become paralyzed about it. I'm just saying look back so you can continue to plow forward. So there's a lot of appreciation. 18 years, that's huge. I remember I used to look at my marriage and be like, well, we were married 10 years. I used to find success in the fact that I was just counting the years. Little did I know it was slowly declining. Little did I know we were growing more unhappy each and every day. I'm not saying things are perfect, by no means. But the conversation of divorce doesn't come up like it used to be. We used to throw that word around like if it was like a dime a dozen, right? Any little disagreement, divorce. I don't like what she's wearing, divorce. Vice versa, divorce. This restaurant sucks, divorce. We were throwing it around in every conversation, as opposed to challenging ourselves on how we can get better. So don't forget to remember. Don't forget to remember, we all came into this business and we got to remember why we got into it. But instead, we're focused on all the turmoil and all the frustrations and all the problems that come your way. You're forgetting to remember why you got into this business to begin with. You're forgetting to remember how things used to be. And we got to constantly ask ourselves that same question, or tell ourselves to don't forget. And when things are good, don't forget. That's at the very moment you should remember even more. Because that's when you tend to, take your foot off the pedal, when things are going good. Only to realize 3 or 4 months later to be in that same spot of like, how did I get here? How did things get so bad? Well, you forgot to remember 4 months prior when you had all those closings. When you just didn't feel like returning your phone calls as quickly. When you stopped marketing, you forgot to remember. Understand that if you want a successful business, is love, respect, and appreciation. You want a successful relationship, you need love, respect, and appreciation. You want a successful business, marketing, sales, and systems every day. You want a healthy body? You got to eat the right foods. You got to love and appreciate yourself. But these are the things that we have to remember. We can't go through the yo-yo of success like many people go through yo-yo diets where they win and then they lose. They win and then they lose. There's a certain way to continue to live and win. But it requires you not to forget to remember. When people ask me like, man, it seems like you're always on the edge, AZ. There's no reason you should wake up so early. There's no reason you should continue to push forward. It's like you're living on the edge. What I don't realize is living on that edge, being on edge, it's what gives me the edge. It's which allows me to continue to grow and prosper. Every year is getting better. Because I can't afford to be complacent. I know what that brings me. You know what that brings you. When you take your foot off the pedal, you realize the dysfunction that comes with it. Don't act like you don't remember. Go back to those feelings, those emotions. You don't want to be there again. So don't forget to remember and understand that whatever obstacle you're facing right now, and it could be with your health, it could be with your business, it could be with your marriage, the relationship with your kids. You did it once, you can do it again. You've done it once. Every situation you're facing right now, you've been through it once before. You can do it again. Don't act like this is the first time you're going through this, where now you're paralyzed with worry, with anxiety, with depression. Like, get up. You know the story to this. I couldn't afford to forget to remember in the early months of 2020. As the entire world is about to collapse, is what they're saying on the news. Millions will die. The real estate market is going to tank. I've been through this before. I couldn't afford to forget to remember. And during those times, the toughest moments, during those times is when I sat there overwhelmed, sat there worried. I came out on top in one of the darkest times in our economy when I just took action. When I realized it's all on me. I can make my situation better. So when 2020 came around, I saw the writing on the wall because I didn't forget to remember. Doing nothing only created more chaos. Doing nothing only created more pain, more suffering, more turmoil. I knew I had to lead from the front. I knew I couldn't shut down. During that time, we challenged ourselves. Let's go run 100 miles. Let's go run 100 miles. And it took us about 4 weeks to get there. And then when we finished that, let's go train for an Ironman. I knew I needed to be in my power because when things are going bad and you mistreating yourself and you shutting down doesn't make things any better. Going through bad times powerfully is what makes you better. Going through bad times powerfully is what makes you better. I've seen that story before. And I got out of that story, out of that suffering, when I just did something about it. I looked for opportunities. I looked for a way out. I didn't just shut down in despair. I refused to shut down in the early part of 2020. And you all saw that. You all came along with me. We captured market share. We grew bigger. We didn't stop, more prosperous. I made decisions that would have paralyzed me before, but I remember when times were tough, if I remain powerful, I will make the right decisions. We signed on this building. We made decisions that most wouldn't do. Because I didn't forget to remember. So you have a choice. Whatever obstacles, it may be in your business, it may be in your relationships, it may be in your health. You got to fight and remember, you've been here before. And sometimes it does take in being on the edge to give you the edge. So I think we all deserve that joy, that peace. But it comes on the back of hard work and ambition. Understand that. And remembering how things used to be. So don't forget to remember. Guys, I want to thank you for joining me for this episode of Mindset Mastery. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Badass Agents Podcast, brought to you by AZ & Associates and Do the Work Coaching and Consulting. You can watch this and other episodes by subscribing to our channel on YouTube or by visiting us directly at badassagents.com. And of course, you can listen to this episode and many others on your preferred podcast provider.